As you move forward with and you're moving more into the performance capacity and the response time aspects, we're able to very quickly identify if it's directly tied to that particular server, what the response time is. But as you start moving further to the right in this graph, you have more and more components, and it becomes more and more complex. So you have to look at all the different areas and be able to look at the response time, look at the layout, and figuring in, as we say, the response time impacts, but also looking at the latency, which is factored in there. Look at the latency of getting the data from this particular blade out to this particular virtual machine. So those are some of the critical numbers that you need to look at, not just IOs per second that you're getting through, but also looking at the latency numbers. Then along with that, look at utilization. Too many times people get really concentrated on looking at device utilization and don't step outside the box and see of the other metrics that may be valuable in managing your environment. It looks good. It's critical to look at utilization, but as we were talking about, it's not the only thing. And in most of the time, when you're looking at the utilization, it's from the standpoint of the physical server that we're actually running these reports from. Again, we talked about the queue links, looking at utilization, looking at your queue links, determining how it is, particularly from a server standpoint. And again, you want to talk about the latency that you may be occurring within your environment. As was typical with any type of performance management, once you start hitting that, we like to call the knee of the curve, you're going to start seeing that the utilization is pretty much flat. It's growing, but then all of a sudden it's going to spike. And that's what you need to look at, is where is it spiking, when is it spiking, what is causing it to spike, and again, be able to manage that and be able to make appropriate changes within your environment to manage those spikes. Now, all those spikes, again, looking at it, is it a one-time situation because maybe of an application, or is it a growing trend out there that we need to be cognizant of? And then looking at it, one of the key things is looking at it from a service time versus response time. There are two different metrics. There are two different activities out there within your environment. So looking at those and understanding how service time and or response time fits into your environment is going to be critical, especially looking at if you have a tiered environment where you have a gold tier, which is the ultimate fastest that you could have out there, versus a silver tier, which is, okay, it's performing as necessary within the environment. So you need to look at that and factor that into your component breakdowns. And then along with that, to be able to look at your workload profiles. Is the application exchange? People get upset if their email starts running slow, depending on the type of application, whether it's an Oracle database, whether it's SQL Server, Sybase, MySQL, any of those types of things, be able to look at the I/O profiles out there, being able to look at web server profiles, is the application pure read or pure write? And there's many tools out there, and some of them are free, such as IO Meter, IO Zone, Bonnie, those types of things that you can look at and create workload profiles so you can see how the processing is based upon applications. So it's another good way to go out and look at the environment. And again, if you start looking at from a best practices point of view, that's again where we focus in on dashboards, and the dashboards being able to show you the CPU and the memory and the I/O, and being able to give you a red, amber, green type of scenario, and looking at where do I need to focus my activities on? Where do I need to look at and change or re-architect my environment? So that's what you need to look at. That's what you need to do. And by having a dashboard and using a dashboard type of reporting mechanism, it's going to, because the complexity of the environment, it's going to allow you to very quickly focus on these thresholds that you have set and be able to look at those particular areas. And again, like I said, having a dashboard, within the dashboard, you can have not just static metrics, but you're going to be able to have trending, maybe exceptions, those types of things. Many organizations, what they've done is they've created an exception-only dashboard. They've got one that runs for the whole environment, but it's set out there and it's just out there for historical point of view. But the one that they concentrate on is the exception thresholds or the exception dashboard. And within Athene, you can create similar types of dashboards. So as we're looking at this and looking at the best practices, continuing, look at the service levels and establish the baselines. Those baselines are going to be different for different tiers, different users, different applications, but you need to understand that. There's many different data sources out there from such as, like I talked about, NetApp or EMC, where you can get a lot of that data. They provide utilities to be able to gather that data and load that data into various, whether you use Excel spreadsheets, use Athene with its integrator product, those types of things to be able to report on that data. But one of the key things that Athene allows you to do, and again, looking at it for whatever tool you are, is consolidating all your reporting tools and all your data so it's all coming from one place. What's the key about that is with the quality control of the data and allowing you to correlate that data together, whether it's by time frame or whether it's by application or whether that correlation happens by physical infrastructure. That's where the quality control comes in. As we move through this and final thoughts, we've given you a lot of information here in talking about this, but from a capacity manager standpoint is when you're looking at applications, you're going to go talk to the business owners. When you're looking at the server environment, you're going to go talk to the server admins. Looking at the network, you're going to go talk to the LAN admins or the network admins out there. But make sure that you also talk to the storage team, understanding what they're doing, understanding the kinds of reports that they're either generating, and help fill in the gaps within those reports and to be able to create a robust capacity management process and reporting process for your environment. Because many of these storage arrays are out there connected through the network, you're going to need to understand the network utilization out there. So you're going to need to factor that in. Set priorities by creating exceptions, be able to look at tiers, set the priorities of where you're going to spend your time and effort. Simplify it. We've got a lot to do. The simpler you make the process, the better off you're going to be. Look at formal naming conventions, but also understand the tools, no matter what those tools are. Some of them may be tools that you've written that you've carried forward for years. Some of them may be new tools that are out there within the enterprise, within IT from different vendors. Or there may be tools that are in the open source arena that you can get a hold of that will help you within your environment. However you do that, make use of all those tools out there.